John Gotti's suggestion was even a little bit more crazy, I think, than Sammy's, and that was to bribe a president. And his suggestion to Sammy Gravano was somewhere down the line, 5 years from now, we put together a $5 million package. We can walk right out the front door, we could bribe a president. And Sammy looked at John, and John looked at Sammy, and the way I get it was they both thought that each other was crazy.
This time, John could not count on his longtime lawyer, Bruce Cutler. The government said Cutler was too close to organized crime. On one tape, Gotti was heard complaining about Cutler's fees.
Where's that? Gambino crime family. This is the Chagall, Cutler, and what do you call crime family? If you know and I know that they know that you're taking the money to the table. Every time you take a client on one of my sons, you're breaking the law.
In jail, Sammy the Bull knew he could be implicated in as many as 19 mob hits. That's when Sammy decided to become what he had always said he hated, a rat. He agreed to testify against the boss in exchange for a lighter sentence. Gotti was devastated. At the trial, his closest ally, Sammy the Bull, took the stand and told the world how John ran the Gambino family and how he and Gotti had plotted the assassination of Castellano.
It took a while for Gravano to look over at Gotti, but when he saw the way Gotti was looking at him, it was the same kind of look on his face. It's really hard to describe, but if looks could kill, 2 people would have been dead in the courtroom that day.
The jury took less than 2 days to find Gotti guilty on all counts.
I was with John when he was sentenced. He gets life without parole, and the judge imposes a $50 special assessment. And we're back in the holding cell afterwards, and John's taking off his tie, getting out of his suit. He says, "Boy, that $50 special assessment, they really know how to stick it to a guy, huh?" And he laughs. Life without parole, and he laughs.
Gotti was sent off to the maximum security federal penitentiary at Marion, Illinois. Gravano, after a short prison term, was put in the witness protection program under a new name. The Gambino crime family would never be the same.
John Gotti made a lot of money for himself and his immediate family. In the end, however, he helped bring the Gambino crime family down to a lower level than it had been.
From prison, Gotti made it known in the family that he wanted his son, John Jr., to take over.
John Gotti ended up committing the same crimes within the mob that he so much hated his predecessors for. Why did he hate Paul Castellano? Because he hadn't earned his position. He got it, because of who he was related to. Yet, in the end, what did John Gotti do? He made his son, a relatively inexperienced gangster, not much more than a kid, the boss of the family, surpassing many in higher rank, hundreds with more experience who felt more deserving. So, he became, in many ways, what he loathed.
John Jr., the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. Here's a guy who has at his disposal, because of his father's name, access to sophisticated type of crime. Computers, high-tech communication system. In fact, there's a lot of mob guys involved in the 900 number scheme, where you call up for sex and whatever, astrology, whatever. And there's a lot of money to be made in that. But this moron is going around with a band of thugs who are hooked into weightlifting and steroids, shaking down bars and discos in Westchester, Bronx, and parts of New York City.
While a lot of the men didn't hold John Jr. in high regard, they didn't challenge him either. Nobody wanted to become the new Gambino boss. The risks far outweighed the glory.
If I'm a mobster with a brain in my head, I don't want that job. Because once you take that job, you're an all-out target of law enforcement. I'd rather stay in the background, earn my money, have my girlfriends, enjoy myself. Why do I need that kind of attention?
The remaining 200 or so Gambino members under John Jr.'s direction still operated many of the street rackets and had clout in the staples of construction and trucking. There to advise John Jr. were some of the family's elders, among them Carlo's son, Tommy Gambino. Over the years, Tommy had risen to the rank of capo, but no further. He shared a remarkable likeness to his father, from his hooked nose to his gentlemanly, polite demeanor. But all of his life, Tommy felt trapped by the legacy left to him.
A White House listening device planted by the FBI picked Tommy up saying this: "Me, I never had the chance to say, well, I'm going to do something I want to do. I always did it for my family, for my children, for my father." That's a very touching statement. Poor Tommy Gambino, he always did what he was told, like a good little boy.
What he was told was to control the garment district. For decades, Tommy had a stranglehold on trucking there. But in 1992, the Gambino grip was broken. Tommy, along with his younger brother and business partner Joseph, pleaded guilty to antitrust charges. They were forced to give up much of their trucking operations. More sorrows came for Tommy in the mid-1990s when he was sentenced to 5 years in prison for running loan sharking and gambling operations.
So the Gambino family really, in many ways, has been stripped of the legendary leadership that they had for many years. I mean, you go back again to what I said, Vincent Mangano, Albert Anastasia, Carlo Gambino, and when I say legendary, I would stop there. Paul Castellano, he tried to wreak a lot of the profits that his brother-in-law left him, and John Gotti just brought the family down.
The family's been shattered. So you have the rise of this enormous criminal organization. Then it reaches its apogee in the reign of Carlo Gambino and the reign of Paul Castellano, and then crashes, is destroyed by the reign of John Gotti. I think a final thought may be a quote from Big Paul Castellano. "This life of ours, this is a wonderful life. If you can get through life like this and get away with it, hey, that's great. But it's very unpredictable. There are so many ways you can screw it up." They screw